Part 1. Introduction to Sumer and Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Imagine a land sculpted by two mighty rivers, their life-giving waters snaking through a vast, sun-baked plain before emptying into the Persian Gulf. This was Mesopotamia, a Greek term meaning the land between the rivers, referring to the Tigris and Euphrates. In the southern reaches of this fertile crescent, a remarkable civilization blossomed, Sumer. It was here, nearly 6 millennia ago, that humanity laid the foundational stones of urban life, complex governance, sophisticated writing, and organized religion. Innovations that would ripple through history and shape the course of human development. Mesopotamia, unlike the geographically protected Egypt, was an open plain, making it both a crossroads for diverse peoples and ideas, and also vulnerable to invasion. Yet, it was precisely this openness, combined with the agricultural bounty provided by the rivers, that fostered an environment ripe for innovation. The annual flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates, though unpredictable, deposited rich, fertile silt, transforming the arid landscape into an agricultural paradise once harnessed through ingenious irrigation systems. This abundance of food allowed for a surplus, freeing a portion of the population from direct food production and enabling the specialization of labor, a critical precursor to the development of complex societies. Sumer itself occupied the southernmost region of Mesopotamia, roughly corresponding to modern-day southern Iraq. It wasn't a unified empire in its earliest stages, but rather a collection of independent city-states, each a self-governing entity with its own patron deity, unique traditions, and sometimes rivalries. Cities like Uruk, Ur, Lagash, Nippur, and Kish would rise to prominence, each contributing to the rich tapestry of Sumerian culture. Why is Sumer often hailed as the cradle of civilization? The list of their firsts is staggering and truly revolutionary. The invention of writing. The Sumerians developed cuneiform, the world's first true writing system. Initially pictographic, it evolved into a sophisticated system of wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets, allowing for record-keeping, legal codes, literature, and the very concept of history itself. The first cities. While settlements existed before, Sumerians built the first true cities, characterized by large populations, monumental architecture, like ziggurats, complex social structures, and specialized labor beyond mere subsistence. Sophisticated governance. They developed complex administrative systems, including early forms of bureaucracy, organized labor, and legal frameworks to manage their growing urban populations and resources. Advanced agriculture. Their mastery of irrigation, including canals, dikes, and reservoirs, transformed vast stretches of arid land into highly productive farms, supporting large urban populations. Early mathematics and astronomy. The Sumerians developed a sexagesimal, base 60, number system, which is why we have 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute, and 360 degrees in a circle. They meticulously observed celestial bodies, laying groundwork for astronomy. Monumental architecture. The ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid temple, is perhaps the most iconic Sumerian architectural achievement, testifying to their engineering prowess and profound religious devotion. The wheel. While its exact origin is debated, the earliest evidence of wheeled vehicles comes from Sumer, revolutionizing transport and pottery making. The story of Sumer is one of remarkable human ingenuity and adaptability, driven by the challenges and opportunities presented by their unique environment. From humble agricultural villages, they forged a civilization that would leave an indelible mark on the human story, pioneering many of the fundamental elements that define our modern world. Part 2. Early Sumerian period, from villages to the first megacities. The journey from scattered agricultural settlements to the grand urban centers of Sumer was a gradual process, spanning millennia. It began with precursor cultures that laid the groundwork for what was to come, most notably the Ubaid period, followed by the revolutionary Uruk period. The Ubaid period, circa 6500, 4100 BCE, the foundations of society. Long before the grandeur of Ur or Uruk dominated the landscape, the Ubaid culture flourished across Mesopotamia, particularly in the south. Named after the Tell mound of Ul-Ubaid, where its distinctive pottery was first discovered, this period marks a crucial transition. Communities were still largely agricultural, but they began to exhibit characteristics that foreshadowed later Sumerian society. Village life and early agriculture. Ubaid people were skilled farmers, utilizing the fertile floodplains and developing rudimentary irrigation techniques to cultivate barley and wheat. They lived in small, self-sufficient villages of reed huts and mud brick houses. Distinctive pottery. A hallmark of the Ubaid culture is its beautiful, high-quality painted pottery, often adorned with geometric designs. This suggests a degree of craft specialization and trade networks connecting different communities. Early temple structures. Crucially, the Ubaid period saw the emergence of simple, tripartite, three-part, mud brick buildings that are widely interpreted as the earliest temples. These structures, often built on raised platforms, indicate the growing importance of communal religious practices and a centralized focus for the community. The consistent rebuilding of these temples on the same spot, gradually elevating them, is seen as the very genesis of the ziggurat tradition. Social stratification. While not as pronounced as in later periods, archaeological evidence suggests a nascent social hierarchy, perhaps based on family lineage or religious authority, as some burials contain more elaborate grave goods than others. The Ubaid period laid the essential groundwork: a settled agricultural lifestyle, rudimentary organizational structures, and a clear move towards centralized religious authority, all vital ingredients for the explosion of urbanism that was to follow. The Uruk period, circa 4100, 2900 BCE, the urban revolution. The Uruk period represents an unparalleled leap forward in human organization and technological innovation, often dubbed the urban revolution. It was during this era that true cities, as we understand them, first emerged, with Uruk, modern Walker, standing as the largest and most influential. The rise of the megacity, Uruk. Uruk was not merely a large village, it was a sprawling urban center, possibly the largest city in the world at its peak, with an estimated population of 40,000 to 80,000 people living within its massive walls. Its monumental architecture, particularly the Eanna district, dedicated to the goddess Inanna, and the Anu district, dedicated to the sky god Anu, showcase structures of unprecedented scale. The White Temple, built atop the Anu ziggurat, towered over the city, a testament to the power of the priesthood and the collective labor force. Development of writing, cuneiform. This is arguably Uruk's most significant contribution. The demands of administering such a large and complex city, managing agricultural surpluses, allocating resources, organizing labor, and keeping track of goods, necessitated a reliable system of record keeping. What began as simple pictograms, symbols representing objects, like a head of grain or an ox, evolved over time into a more abstract system of wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay tablets using a stylus, cuneiform. Early cuneiform tablets from Uruk primarily detail economic transactions and administrative lists, proving its origin in practical necessity rather than literary ambition. This invention fundamentally changed how information was stored and transmitted, enabling complex bureaucracies and, eventually, literature and law. Cylinder seals and administration. Another innovation of the Uruk period was the widespread use of cylinder seals. These small, engraved cylinders were rolled over wet clay to create a continuous impression, serving as a signature, a mark of ownership, or a way to secure goods. Their intricate designs depict daily life, religious scenes, and mythological creatures, offering invaluable insights into Sumerian culture and administration. The need for such tools highlights the growing complexity of economic transactions and the emphasis on accountability. Specialization of labor and social hierarchy. The sheer scale of Uruk required a highly specialized workforce. Beyond farmers, there were architects, scribes, potters, metallurgists, textile workers, and administrators. This specialization led to a more defined social hierarchy, with priests and temple administrators at the top, managing the city's resources, followed by skilled craftsmen, merchants, farmers, and laborers. The temple, as the central economic and religious institution, played a pivotal role in organizing this complex society. Mass production and innovation. The Uruk period also saw the introduction of new technologies and methods for mass production, particularly evident in pottery. The potters will become widespread, allowing for the rapid creation of standardized, undecorated beveled rim bowls, common, utilitarian vessels possibly used for rationing food or collecting taxes. This indicates a shift towards an industrialized approach to meet the demands of a growing urban population. The Uruk period was a crucible of innovation, transforming human settlements from agrarian villages into vibrant, complex urban centers. The inventions of writing, sophisticated administration, and monumental architecture laid the essential groundwork for all subsequent Mesopotamian civilizations and, indeed, much of global urban development. The stage was now set for the rise of powerful city-states and the dynastic struggles that would define the next era. Part 3. The Early Dynastic Period, circa 2900–2350 BCE. The Age of City-States and Kings. Following the transformative Uruk period, Sumer entered an era characterized by the flourishing of numerous independent city-states, each a formidable political and economic entity. This was the early dynastic period, a time marked by innovation, fierce rivalries, and the emergence of clearly defined kingship. The rise of independent city-states. Unlike the presumed unified influence of Uruk in the preceding period, the early dynastic period saw the decentralization of power into a constellation of powerful city-states. Each city, such as Ur, Lagash, Umma, Kish, Nippur, Eridu, and Shuruppak, was an autonomous political unit, typically controlling its immediate agricultural hinterland and often centered around the temple of its patron deity. Of the city as a sacred space, the city was more than just a collection of buildings. It was seen as the domain of a particular god or goddess, who was considered the true owner of the city's land and resources. The ziggurat, a massive stepped temple tower, became the focal point of each city, dominating the skyline and symbolizing the city's connection to the divine. Priests managed the temple economy, which often owned vast tracts of land and engaged in extensive agricultural and craft production. Walled cities and defense. The increasing population and economic prosperity of these city-states, coupled with the open nature of Mesopotamia, led to frequent conflicts over fertile land, water rights, and trade routes. Consequently, cities became heavily fortified with massive defensive walls. The very word for king in Sumerian, lugal, can be interpreted as great man or owner of a large house, but also potentially as a war leader, hinting at the martial nature of the period. The emergence of kingship and power struggles. While early Uruk might have been governed by powerful priests, the early dynastic period witnessed the firm establishment of secular kingship. The Lugal, king, or Ensi, city ruler, often priestly, emerged as the dominant political and military leader. At the Sumerian king list, this ancient text, compiled centuries later, attempts to list the kings of Sumer from mythical beginnings, often noting how kingship descended from heaven. While its early entries are legendary, it provides a sense of the perceived continuity and legitimacy of dynastic rule. It also reflects the shifting hegemonies, with kingship moving from one city to another as power waxed and waned. A constant warfare, the independent nature of the city-states inevitably led to constant conflict. Disputes over borders, canals, and resources were common. One of the best documented examples is the centuries-long rivalry between Lagash and Umma over a fertile border region called the Gu Adina. Inscriptions like the Stele of the Vultures from Lagash commemorate military victories, depicting gruesome scenes of battle and emphasizing the role of the king as a victorious warrior blessed by the gods. These conflicts, though destructive, also spurred military innovation and solidified the role of the king as the primary defender of his city. Royal burials and prestige. The royal tombs of Ur, excavated by Leonard Woolley in the 1920s, provide a breathtaking glimpse into the wealth and power of early dynastic rulers. Dating to around 2600 to 2500 BCE, these tombs contained astonishing treasures: elaborate gold headdresses, intricately carved lyres, gaming boards, and weapons, alongside evidence of ritual sacrifice of attendants, soldiers, and musicians. These lavish burials were not just expressions of personal wealth but powerful statements of the king's status, their connection to the divine, and their ability to command vast resources and human lives, even in death. Legal and administrative developments. Despite the conflicts, this period also saw significant administrative and legal advancements. Early legal reforms. While Hammurabi's code, much later, is famous, earlier legal reforms existed. Uruk-agina, a ruler of Lagash, circa 2350 BCE, is notable for his reforms aimed at curbing corruption and protecting the common citizen from abuses by temple officials and elites. Though not a comprehensive law code, his decrees represent an early attempt to establish justice and order within the state, suggesting a growing awareness of social welfare and civic rights. A sophistication of cuneiform, writing continued to evolve and become more standardized. While still primarily used for administrative and economic records, there is also evidence of early literary texts, hymns, and royal inscriptions, indicating a broader application of writing beyond mere accounting. The scribal schools, Iduba, began to formalize, training a professional class crucial for the complex administration of the city-states. The early dynastic period was a vibrant and tumultuous era. It solidified the urban model, established the institution of kingship, and saw continuous innovation in warfare, administration, and cultural expression. However, the constant internal strife among the Sumerian city-states ultimately made them vulnerable, setting the stage for the dramatic rise of a new power that would unify Mesopotamia under a single empire. Part 4. The Akkadian Empire, circa 2350–2154 BCE, and the Gutian Interlude, circa 2154–2112 BCE. The constant internecine warfare among the Sumerian city-states, while fostering individual strengths, also created a vulnerability. It was into this fractured political landscape that a new power emerged from central Mesopotamia, a people speaking a Semitic language distinct from Sumerian, the Akkadians. Their rise would fundamentally alter the political map of the ancient Near East, creating the world's first empire and demonstrating the power of centralized rule on an unprecedented scale. The rise of the Akkadian Empire under Sargon the Great. The pivotal figure in this transformation was Sargon of Akkad, reigned c. 2334 to 2279 BCE. His origins are shrouded in legend, a humble beginning, perhaps abandoned in a basket on the river, reminiscent of later mythical heroes. He rose from cupbearer to the king of Kish to become the founder of a new capital, Akkad, whose exact location remains unknown but was likely near modern Baghdad. A unification by conquest. Sargon embarked on a series of military campaigns that systematically conquered the Sumerian city-states one by one. His disciplined army, likely the first to be permanently maintained by a ruler rather than assembled for specific campaigns, proved superior to the forces of individual city-states. He crushed Lugalzadesai of Umma, who had previously united much of Sumer, and then extended his conquests northward, westward, and eastward, creating an empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. This was an empire on a scale never before seen. A centralized rule. Sargon's genius lay not just in conquest but in administration. He established a centralized bureaucracy, replacing the independent rulers of conquered cities with his own loyal governors, often family members or trusted appointees. This marked a significant departure from the city-state model, ushering in an era where loyalty was directed towards the emperor rather than a local deity or city. A cultural blend and imperial ideology. While the Akkadians were Semitic, they largely adopted and adapted Sumerian cuneiform for their own Akkadian language. This led to a fascinating linguistic and cultural blend. Akkadian art, particularly the famous head of an Akkadian ruler, often thought to be Sargon himself, shows a new naturalism and a focus on the powerful, idealized image of the king. Imperial ideology was heavily promoted, emphasizing the emperor's divine favor and unparalleled might. Temples were built or restored throughout the empire to various deities, both Sumerian and Akkadian, reflecting an attempt to integrate diverse populations. Economic prosperity. The vast empire facilitated extensive trade networks and allowed for the efficient mobilization of resources. This period saw increased prosperity and monumental building projects, funded by tribute and consolidated wealth. Successors to Sargon, Naram-Sin and the zenith of Akkadian power. Sargon's dynasty continued, with his grandson Naram-Sin, reigned c. 2254 to 2218 BCE, reaching the pinnacle of Akkadian power and prestige. As the first divine king, Naram-Sin was the first Mesopotamian ruler to deify himself during his lifetime, declaring himself God of Akkad. This bold claim, unprecedented for a human king, showcased the immense power and ambition of the Akkadian rulers. His famous victory stele of Naram-Sin depicts him as a divine, colossal figure ascending a mountain over his enemies, wearing a horned helmet typically reserved for deities. A further expansion, Naram-Sin continued to expand the empire, pushing its borders and maintaining control through military strength. However, the Akkadian Empire, despite its innovations and power, faced inherent challenges. Its vastness made it difficult to control, and rebellions were frequent. Moreover, environmental factors, particularly a severe drought that impacted agricultural productivity, may have significantly weakened the empire. The Gutian Interlude, circa 2154, 2112 BCE, a period of chaos. The end of the Akkadian Empire is often attributed to the incursions of the Gutians, a barbaric and enigmatic people from the Zagros Mountains to the east. Their invasion and decline. Around 2154 BCE, the Gutians swept into Mesopotamia, contributing to the collapse of Akkadian central authority. The Sumerian king list describes this period as a time of chaos and disruption. Who was king? Who was not king? This suggests a breakdown of centralized rule and a return to a more fragmented political landscape, with Gutian chieftains ruling over parts of Sumer. A Dark Age. Historians often refer to the Gutian period as a Dark Age, due to the relative scarcity of written records compared to the preceding and succeeding eras. While their rule was disruptive and likely led to a decline in prosperity and order, it's important to note that Sumerian culture did not entirely disappear. Local Sumerian city-states, though perhaps paying tribute or acknowledging Gutian overlordship, likely retained some degree of autonomy and cultural continuity, particularly in the south. Lagash, for example, flourished during this time under rulers like Gudea, known for his pious devotion and the numerous statues he commissioned. The Gutian period, though seemingly a step backward for Mesopotamian civilization, served as a crucial interlude. It highlighted the vulnerabilities of a centralized empire and paved the way for a powerful Sumerian resurgence, eager to throw off foreign domination and restore their own glorious traditions. Part 5, Ur period, Neo-Sumerian Renaissance, circa 2112–2004 BCE. Following the tumultuous Gutian interlude, Mesopotamia experienced a vibrant Sumerian revival, a period often referred to as the Neo-Sumerian Renaissance or, more specifically, the Ur period, named after the powerful third dynasty of Ur. This era saw the re-establishment of a centralized, unified state, a flourishing of Sumerian culture, and a level of bureaucratic sophistication perhaps unprecedented in human history up to that point. The expulsion of the Gutians and the rise of Ur-Nammu. The end of Gutian rule is somewhat unclear, but it seems that a coalition of Sumerian city-states eventually drove them out. The decisive figure in establishing the new order was Ur-Nammu, who initially served as a general under Utu-Hegel of Uruk, credited with expelling the Gutians. Ur-Nammu then consolidated power, establishing the third dynasty of Ur around 2112 BCE and initiating a period of immense stability and prosperity. Foundation of the Ur state. Ur-Nammu quickly asserted control over Sumer and Akkad. Unlike the Akkadian Empire, which was built on conquest and often maintained through military might, the Ur state emphasized order, justice, and the restoration of traditional Sumerian values. Ur-Nammu aimed to create a benevolent and effective administration. The law code of Ur-Nammu. One of Ur-Nammu's most significant achievements was the promulgation of what is believed to be the oldest surviving law code in human history, predating Hammurabi's famous code by several centuries. Though only fragments survive, the code, written in Sumerian, details laws concerning property, injury, marriage, and slavery, and importantly, prescribes monetary fines as penalties rather than the eye-for-an-eye retribution seen in later codes. This indicates a sophisticated legal system focused on compensation and deterrence, reflecting a highly organized society. Monumental building projects. Ur-Nammu initiated an ambitious program of temple and ziggurat construction across his domain. His most famous legacy is the Great Ziggurat of Ur, a massive stepped platform dedicated to the moon god Nanna. This monumental structure, meticulously restored in modern times, stands as a testament to the engineering capabilities and vast organized labor force of the Ur state, as well as its profound religious devotion. Similar ziggurats were built or restored in cities like Eridu, Uruk, and Nippur. Shulgi and the consolidation of the empire. Yornamu's son, Shulgi, reigned c. 2094 to 2047 BCE, continued and expanded his father's policies, bringing the Ur III state to its zenith. Shulgi's long reign was characterized by an extraordinary level of centralization and administrative efficiency. Imperial expansion and control. Shulgi expanded the empire's borders, particularly into Elam, modern Iran, and Assyria to the north. He maintained control through a highly organized military and a sophisticated system of provincial governors. Bureaucratic masterpiece. The Ur III state under Shulgi was arguably the most bureaucratic state in the ancient world until that time. Records from this period, found in the tens of thousands, detail every aspect of the economy: grain production, livestock, labor assignments, taxes, and trade. Specialized officials oversaw different sectors, and a complex system of checks and balances ensured accountability. This meticulous record-keeping was made possible by an army of highly trained scribes and the standardized cuneiform script. Taxation and redistribution. The empire operated a sophisticated system of taxation, collecting resources from its provinces and redistributing them for public works, temple maintenance, and the upkeep of the army and administration. The Bala system, a rotating tribute paid by the various provinces, was a cornerstone of this economic engine. Standardization and education. Shulgi promoted the Sumerian language and culture. He reformed the scribal schools, Iduba, standardizing the curriculum and emphasizing the study of Sumerian literary texts, hymns, and proverbs. This Sumerian Renaissance saw a flourishing of literature, with compositions glorifying the kings and praising the gods. Shulgi, himself a scholar, was even deified during his lifetime, following the precedent set by Naram Sin, but integrating it more seamlessly into a traditional Sumerian religious framework. Royal roads and communication. To manage such a vast and centralized empire, Shulgi also developed a network of royal roads and a highly efficient messenger system, facilitating rapid communication and troop movement. Decline and fall. Despite its impressive organization and prosperity, the Ur III Empire eventually faced internal and external pressures that led to its collapse. Internal stress. The highly centralized system, while efficient, was also rigid and demanded immense resources. Environmental factors, such as salinization of agricultural land due to centuries of irrigation, likely reduced crop yields. Amorite infiltrations. From the west, nomadic Semitic-speaking tribes, the Amorites, began to increasingly infiltrate and settle within the empire's borders. Initially a trickle, their numbers grew, putting pressure on resources and making border control challenging. Elamite and Amorite attacks. Around 2025 BCE, the Elamites, traditional rivals from the east, launched devastating attacks. Coupled with increasing pressure from the Amorites, the empire was attacked on multiple fronts. The fall of Ur, circa 2004 BCE. The final blow came around 2004 BCE when a combined force of Elamites and Amorites sacked the capital city of Ur. The event was so catastrophic that it became the subject of lamentation literature, poignant Sumerian poems mourning the destruction of the city and the end of the empire. This marked the definitive end of Sumerian political dominance in Mesopotamia. While the Ur III period ended tragically, its legacy was profound. It represented the last great flowering of Sumerian civilization as a political entity, showcasing an unparalleled degree of organization, legal development, and cultural brilliance. Its fall cleared the way for new powers, particularly the Amorites, who would go on to establish the Old Babylonian and Old Assyrian empires, but they would do so building upon the foundational innovations and cultural heritage left by the Sumerians. Part 6: Sumerian Culture, Society, and Daily Life, the Fabric of a Civilization. Beyond the shifting dynastic powers and the impressive administrative achievements, the Sumerians developed a rich and complex culture that permeated every aspect of their existence. Their worldview, social structures, and daily routines shaped a society that was both deeply religious and remarkably innovative. Religion and mythology, a pantheon of deities and cosmic order. Religion was not merely a part of Sumerian life, it was Sumerian life. Their worldview was saturated with the presence of gods and goddesses who controlled every natural phenomenon and every human endeavor. The pantheon. The Sumerians worshipped a vast pantheon of anthropomorphic deities, each associated with specific cities, natural forces, or aspects of human life. An Anu, the sky god, king of the gods, and father of many deities, primarily worshipped in Uruk. Enlil, god of wind, air, storms, and the breath of life, and chief deity of Nipper, he was seen as the most powerful and active god in human affairs. Enki, Ea, god of water, wisdom, magic, crafts, and creation, patron of Eridu, often depicted as a benevolent figure who brought civilization to humanity. Inanna, Ishtar, goddess of love, war, fertility, and justice, highly revered in Uruk, her complex and often contradictory nature reflected the dynamism of life. She was a fierce warrior, a goddess of sensual love, and a dispenser of justice. Nanna, Sin, the moon god, patron of Ur, often associated with wisdom and the cycles of time. Utu, Shamash, the sun god, also associated with justice and prophecy. The cosmos and human purpose. Sumerians believed that humans were created to serve the gods, to provide them with food, drink, and temples, thus sustaining the divine order of the cosmos. Misfortune or natural disasters were often interpreted as signs of divine displeasure. Temples and ziggurats. The temple was the central institution of every Sumerian city. It was not just a place of worship but also an economic hub, owning vast estates, employing craftsmen, and storing surplus goods. The ziggurat, a massive step tower with a temple at its summit, was a symbolic mountain to the gods, a bridge between the heavens and earth, where priests performed rituals and offerings to appease the deities. Mythology and epic literature. Sumerian mythology is rich with tales that influenced later Mesopotamian and even biblical narratives. The Epic of Gilgamesh. Though the fullest version is Akkadian, its roots lie in earlier Sumerian poems about Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Uruk. It explores themes of friendship, mortality, the search for immortality, and the nature of kingship, featuring a great flood narrative. Creation myths. Stories about the creation of the world from a primordial sea, the separation of heaven and earth, and the creation of humanity from clay or blood. Descent of Inanna. The dramatic tale of the goddess Inanna's journey to the underworld and her eventual return, highlighting themes of death, rebirth, and the cycles of nature. Divination and omens. Sumerians frequently sought to understand the will of the gods through divination, interpreting omens from animal entrails, dreams, and celestial phenomena. Social hierarchy. A structured society. Sumerian society was highly stratified, with clear distinctions between different classes. The king, Lugal-Vensi, at the apex of secular power, the king was seen as the earthly representative of the city's patron deity. He was a military leader, chief administrator, and often a high priest, responsible for maintaining order, justice, and the prosperity of the city-state. Priests and temple administrators. Closely allied with the king, The high priests managed the vast temple estates, controlled significant wealth, and performed crucial religious rituals. Their economic and spiritual power was immense. Scribes, a highly respected and vital class. Mastering cuneiform was complex and required years of schooling. Scribes served in every facet of administration, recording economic transactions, legal documents, literary texts, and royal decrees. They were the backbone of the bureaucracy. Merchants and craftsmen, a growing middle class of skilled artisans, potters, metallurgists, weavers, jewelers, carpenters, and merchants who facilitated trade of goods like timber, stone, and metals, which were scarce in Sumer. Farmers and laborers, the vast majority of the population. They worked the land, maintaining irrigation canals, cultivating crops, and raising livestock. They also formed a workforce for monumental building projects like ziggurats and city walls. Slaves. Slavery existed, typically resulting from debt, capture in warfare, or birth. Slaves performed various tasks, from domestic service to agricultural labor. They were considered property but could sometimes earn their freedom. Daily life and economic activities. Life for most Sumerians revolved around agriculture and the demands of their urban environment. Agriculture and irrigation, the lifeblood of Sumer. Farmers managed complex irrigation systems of canals and ditches to bring water from the Tigris and Euphrates to their fields. Barley was the primary crop, used for bread and beer, a staple drink, along with wheat, dates, and vegetables. Trade and resources. Sumer lacked vital resources like timber, stone, and metals. This necessitated extensive trade networks, with goods imported from distant lands like Anatolia, the Levant, Dilmun, Bahrain, and Magan, Oman, in exchange for agricultural surpluses, textiles, and finished goods. Early forms of accounting and contracts developed to facilitate this trade. Housing. Most people lived in modest, single-story mud brick houses, often built around a central courtyard for light and ventilation. Wealthier citizens might have larger, multi-room residences. Diet. A staple diet of barley bread, beer, fish from the rivers, dates, and some vegetables. Meat was less common, reserved for special occasions. Dress. Simple linen or wool garments were common. Men wore kilts or skirts, while women wore draped dresses. Status was often indicated by the quality of fabric, adornments, and hairstyles. Education. Idaba for the elite, particularly potential scribes, education was rigorous. Idaba, tablet house, schools taught cuneiform, mathematics, Sumerian literature, and various administrative skills. Discipline was strict, often involving corporal punishment. Innovations and intellectual achievements. Beyond their initial firsts, Sumerian culture continued to innovate and refine. Mathematics. Their sexagesimal, base 60 number system was highly influential, impacting our divisions of time, minutes, hours, and circles, degrees. They developed methods for arithmetic, geometry, area calculations for fields, and early algebra. Astronomy. Keen observers of the night sky, they tracked planetary movements, identified constellations, and developed a calendar based on lunar cycles, crucial for agricultural planning and religious festivals. Medicine. While intertwined with magic and divine intervention, Sumerians possessed practical medical knowledge, using herbs and simple surgical procedures. Some medical texts list symptoms and treatments. Arts and crafts. Sumerian art is characterized by its votive statues, often large-eyed, praying figures, cylinder seals with intricate narrative scenes, and metallurgy, especially from the royal tombs of Ur, showcasing gold, silver, and lapis lazuli work. Music played a role in religious ceremonies and entertainment, evidenced by the discovery of richly decorated lyres. The vibrant tapestry of Sumerian culture, with its deep spiritual convictions, stratified yet functional society, and relentless pursuit of knowledge and organization, laid the bedrock for all subsequent civilizations in Mesopotamia and significantly influenced the broader ancient world. Their intellectual and social frameworks proved remarkably adaptable and enduring, even as their political power waned. Excellent. Let's conclude our journey with the profound and enduring legacy of the Sumerians. Part 7. Legacy of Sumer, the enduring echoes of the first civilization. Although the political independence of Sumer ceased with the fall of Ur III around 2004 BCE, and the Sumerian language eventually faded from common spoken use, their civilization did not simply vanish. Instead, its innovations, institutions, and cultural forms became the foundational bedrock upon which successive Mesopotamian empires, the Babylonians, Assyrians, and later others, built their own societies. The Sumerian legacy is not merely historical. It is embedded deeply within the very fabric of human civilization, influencing everything from law and literature to mathematics and urban planning. Here are the key aspects of Sumer's lasting impact. 1. The invention of writing, cuneiform, and the dawn of history. Foundation of literacy. The development of cuneiform, beginning with the Uruk period's administrative needs, is arguably Sumer's most revolutionary contribution. It allowed for the systematic recording of laws, contracts, historical events, myths, and scientific observations. Before cuneiform, human knowledge was primarily transmitted orally. After it, information could be stored, disseminated, and built upon across generations. Influence on other scripts. Cuneiform was adopted and adapted by numerous subsequent cultures throughout the Near East, including the Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Elamites, Hittites, and Hurrians, for over 3,000 years. Its influence can be seen indirectly in the development of later alphabetic systems by providing the conceptual framework of written communication. The birth of literature. With writing came the possibility of sophisticated literature. The Sumerian hymns, laments, and especially their epic tales, like those concerning Gilgamesh, provided templates and themes that resonated for millennia, influencing later Mesopotamian literary traditions and potentially even biblical narratives, e.g., the flood story. 2. The concept of the city and urbanism. The first cities, Sumerians didn't just have settlements, they created the first true cities, complex, densely populated urban centers with specialized labor, monumental architecture, sophisticated administration, and a clear division between urban core and agricultural hinterland. Uruk, Ur, and Nippur were prototypes for urban living. Urban planning and infrastructure. Their cities were built with walls, public buildings, and complex irrigation systems that supported large populations. This blueprint for urban organization became a model for cities throughout the ancient world. 3. Law and governance. Early legal codes. The Law Code of Ur-Nammu, the oldest known written legal code, established precedents for written law, justice, and the concept of compensation. This tradition culminated in later, more extensive codes like Hammurabi's, which directly built upon Sumerian legal principles. Bureaucracy and administration. The highly centralized and meticulously documented administration of the Ur III period, with its detailed record-keeping, standardized practices, and hierarchical bureaucracy, served as a model for subsequent empires, demonstrating how large states could be effectively managed. Kingship, the concept of the lugal king as a divinely sanctioned ruler, a warrior, and a protector of justice, established during the early dynastic period, became a fundamental aspect of Mesopotamian political ideology. 4. Mathematics and astronomy. Sexagesimal system, base 60. The Sumerian base 60 numerical system, which gives us 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute, and 360 degrees in a circle, has endured into modern times. It reflects their advanced understanding of mathematics, early algebra and geometry. Their methods for calculating areas, volumes, and solving practical problems laid the groundwork for future mathematical developments. Calendars and celestial observation. Their meticulous observation of celestial bodies led to the development of lunar calendars, crucial for agriculture and religious festivals, and was foundational for later Babylonian astronomy, which in turn influenced Greek and ultimately modern astronomy. 5. Technology and innovation. The wheel, while potentially invented slightly earlier, the earliest evidence of its widespread use in transportation and pottery comes from Sumer. This simple invention revolutionized movement and manufacturing. Irrigation systems. Their mastery of large-scale irrigation, essential for their agricultural prosperity, was a testament to their engineering skills and their ability to organize communal labor for massive public works. Metallurgy. Sumerians were skilled metallurgists, working with copper, bronze, gold, and silver, producing tools, weapons, and intricate works of art. 6. Religious and cultural influence. Religious syncretism. Many Sumerian deities were absorbed into later Mesopotamian pantheons, often under Akkadian names, e.g., Inanna became Ishtar, Enlil became Bel. Sumerian mythological themes and religious practices continued to shape the spiritual lives of Babylonians and Assyrians. Artistic conventions. Sumerian artistic conventions, such as the use of cylinder seals, votive statues, and relief carving, continued to influence Mesopotamian art for centuries. In essence, Sumer provides the origin story for much of what we consider fundamental to civilization. They were the pioneers who took humanity beyond simple village life and into the complex, interconnected world of cities, states, and written knowledge. While their name may not be as immediately recognizable as ancient Egypt or Rome, their intellectual and technological breakthroughs were arguably more foundational, truly setting the stage for all subsequent human progress in the Fertile Crescent and beyond. The cradle of civilization indeed birthed ideas and institutions that continue to echo, subtly or overtly, in our lives today.